Welcome back to The Color of Success, the Black academic experience, where we aim to raise awareness about the unique challenges and opportunities faced by Black students in higher education as they complete their graduate programs. My name is Madi Tito, and I'm joined by my co-host, Brianna. And today our guest is Dr. Fabrice Bernard. So let's jump right in. Dr. Fabrice, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So hey guys, thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm originally from New York. I currently work as a life science consultant. I got my PhD from the Georgia Institute of Technology in biomedical engineering in 2021. Before that, I got my master's in biomedical engineering from the City College of New York, and that was in 2015. And in 2011, I graduated from NYU. Now it's called the Tandon School of Engineering, but I got my biomolecular science degree there. So basically from 2007 to 2021, I spent 12 of those 14 years in school getting my degrees, as Kanye West likes to say.
Very with your degrees.
My degrees, they keep me warm at night.
And so you mentioned that you are currently a life scientist. Is that what you called your title?
I'm a life science consultant. So basically, I work at a boutique consulting firm. It's about 30 people. And what we do is we help pharmaceutical companies specifically support patients. So we help them with their patient support programs. And ultimately, that means that patients have a better experience when they take drugs, hopefully. That work is kind of near and dear to the reason why I started science in the first place. I wanted to help patients get access. I wanted to create treatments for patients. But now I let the smarter people create the treatments. And I just, I just consult. Exactly.
Thank you for that. I was not familiar with that career. So I learned something new today, I guess. So thank you for that. So part of why we're here today is really just to talk about your experiences in your graduate program. So to start off, can you tell us a little bit about maybe why you decided to go to graduate school? Like what really motivated that decision?
What's really interesting is I had no idea that I wanted to go to grad school. Mm-hmm. I actually did my 4 years of undergrad, and around year 4, I realized that I hadn't done the requisite work to prosper in that next career phase, whatever that meant. And being from New York and living in New York at the time, around 2010, 2011, kind of after the recession in 2008 and the lingering kind of economic downturn, then it was just really hard for a Black kid with no connections to get any sort of research job or any sort of science job. Knowing what I know now, I'd probably have a leg up, right? But at that time, I was 20. I was, maybe not a first generation student because my dad went to school in Haiti and in France. My mom got a nursing degree before me, but I was kind of like the first kid to go to university in the US, right? And I just didn't really have any role models in my family or friends or mentors, really, I should say, that I could lean on to help me kind of navigate that path. So I did attend a seminar actually in my senior year of undergrad that talked about grad school. And I was just like, oh, okay, I guess I'm going to go to grad school since I have no idea what I'm going to do. And I was like, oh, I'm going to get into a PhD program, get my PhD, it'll be fine. And so I applied to PhD programs out of undergrad. And I also took the GRE with like a week's notice, right? Terrible GRE scores. Like I had maybe 3 months of research experience before I applied to PhD program. It was an absolute disaster. I did not get into a single PhD program.
No, and that's an expensive test too.
And I did pretty poorly on the GRE as well with a week's notice. So the story is coming, I promise. And so I wanted to go to grad school because it was the next step, right? I didn't really have any career goals. And then ultimately what I realized is, especially in the job market, I felt like I was always going to be Black. I was always going to have to work harder or be smarter than everyone else. So I told myself, like, why not just do that? Why not credential myself so that I could be a trusted voice in a room and people would have to trust the like high value education that I received. And so in a way I had kind of selfish motivations for wanting to get a PhD. I think I started undergrad with very altruistic intentions of like learning science so that I could help people. But ultimately I wanted a PhD so that people would like value me, which I feel like is not necessarily what everyone is getting a PhD for. I think that was mostly motivated by my race and where I'm from. So.
Yeah, I felt that, right? Like wanting to be heard, wanting to be relevant. Yeah. And so you didn't get into grad school, and then what happened? So you didn't
this is good. So I actually worked, I got I went back home. I lived at home. I got a stern talking to, like, hey, you did 4 years of undergrad. Like, what are you doing with your life? It's a pretty sad time, honestly. And so after 6 months, those student loans were due. And I went to a temp company and I found a job inputting invoices at a supply company. And I did that for $13 an hour for 5 months. Yeah, that's an incredibly humbling experience. Wouldn't trade it for the world. Actually, after 5 months, it's funny too, because even in doing invoices, I could have done like 3 times as many as the people who were there, because it was just like, I created macros on the computer to like get the things done. And I was just like, wow, this is such a waste of my brain power. And I'm about to make these people lose their job. So let me just calm down here. So I took it easy then. And actually what I did on the side after work, I'd actually make music and I'd work with various artists. So it was kind of tough actually living a double life. And I don't know if I would have ever gotten that opportunity to pursue that music career had I been in a really like intensive career. So in a way, I'm thankful for the kind of sabbatical, yeah, you can call it that. And so, I worked at that company for 2 years. I like eventually, they had the invoice people in the basement, the dingy basement. I eventually moved upstairs, which was like, the holy grail of that company. And I made a whopping $19 an hour moving forward. And I was a buyer. So I helped companies purchase things, just like a middleman. Like I basically just ordered stuff off of Amazon and HomeDepot.com, right? It wasn't incredibly powerful work, but it did help me, pay my bills, pay my student loans, have a car, fill the car with gas, go to the music studio. After 2 years doing that, I actually got an ultimatum from my ex at the time that either I was going to do something with my life or we weren't going to be together. I used to resent that ultimatum, but ultimately I think it got me on a path that I actually truly enjoyed. I applied to PhD programs again in 2013. And guess what? I didn't get in again.
Oh, no. Did you take the GRE again?
I did take the GRE again. I got a pretty good score. Oh, actually, no, I didn't take the GRE again. I used the same GRE scores. I applied again. One school, the City College of New York, was like, look, the PhD is not for you. You got a lot of impressive candidates you're going against. Why don't you do a master's program? And honestly, that master's program was the springboard to me being a attractive candidate for Georgia Tech and Emory. So in my second year of my master's program, I actually ended up taking that GRE again. I took 3.5 weeks off to study for it. And I was like, 90th percentile in math and 90th percentile in the, what is it, a language section? I don't even know what to call it. But all those little things was like, all those little wins, like, let me know that I was like fully capable when I applied myself. Like going to City College, like my GPA out of undergrad was a 3.4, which I used to be embarrassed about, but ultimately I really didn't apply myself in undergrad. I pushed myself at times and was able to like get some strong semesters, but ultimately I just didn't have someone to guide me in what a work ethic meant, what like consistency meant. So going through that master's program and really applying myself and having like a really high GPA and better better GRE scores created that launching pad for me to get to Georgia Tech. And I think there were also some people at Georgia Tech who were very adamant about recruiting students of color and finding people like me. So I feel like all the kind of stars lined up in order for me to get into a PhD program.
And what made you choose Georgia Tech?
I mean, quite selfishly, they were like the number 2 program in biomedical engineering at the time. And so I almost ignored every other school after I got into Georgia Tech because it was a no-brainer for me. I needed to go to the place where I had the best opportunity. And in the institutions I was at before, I saw what a lack of resources did in terms of students being able to get stuff done, especially at a research institution where you just need like machinery and people who can do specialized things. And so in my previous research, I had to, I would go down to a bodega and like buy pig skins with my own money in order to do materials research with animal tissues, right? So I had to be incredibly resourceful, and I just knew that at Georgia Tech that wasn't going to be the case, and that was the case. I had a lot of support there.
And so, being that like most of your schooling before Georgia Tech was in New York, what was that transition like from New York to Atlanta, Georgia?
It's interesting because I feel like every third person you meet in Atlanta is from another place. And New York was often that answer. So I still got big city vibes from Atlanta. And I do feel like Atlanta was a little bit of a bubble. I mean, being at an institution in Atlanta was like being at a bubble inside of another bubble. So I feel like Atlanta kind of shields you from the kind of racial stuff going on in the South. There's a lot of successful people of color there. And so you don't ever really feel out of place in Atlanta. I mean, it's not anywhere near as diverse as New York City. And there are some like really functional things like, a lack of a public transportation system and stuff like that. And so as a privileged person with a car, like I understood that like I was pretty lucky, even if I was a grad student living paycheck to paycheck, that I had a support system, that I had a car, that I lived in a luxury apartment, air quotes, because actually I shouldn't put air quotes on that. It was a luxury apartment compared to what some other grad students were living in near campus, so.
And were there a lot of students in your cohort or whenever it is you started the program?
I would say yes, about 30 students in my cohort and maybe 200 students in the entire program. So it's a pretty big program. I mean, it was the number, top 5 program, right? So there's a lot of kind of gravity towards that program and competing with MIT and Duke and UCSD. So, there were a lot of professors to work with and thus a lot of students in the programs. And I mean, the professors, if they worked, let's say, in some sort of medical device, right? They could take students from biomedical engineering, they could take students from chemical engineering, robotics, mechanical engineering. So there was a lot of interdisciplinary kind of crosstalk. So even if I was in a program with 200 students, I might know like 1,000 students because there was just so many faces on campus and all the biotech buildings were around each other. So you could really meet a lot of people. Yeah.
And were there a lot of students who looked like you?
In my cohort, honestly, across campus, I would say no. There was one other Black person who started my year. Probably across the whole program, there were like 6 or 7 Black students, which one could say is a lot. When you do the math, you start dividing 6 over 200, then 3% is not great representation. Honestly, I never even thought about it because in academia, as a quote unquote smart kid, you were just always used to being one of X many. So it didn't even cross my mind until people started pointing it out, honestly. Or when you start getting invited to things that you're just like, oh, why do I get invited to everything? Or why does she get invited to every other thing that I get invited to? And it's like, oh, okay, they need the face of Black voices at Georgia Tech in this program to say something here.
And so earlier you mentioned that you felt that Georgia Tech was very intentional when recruiting students to try and recruit more diverse students. How did you feel that you belonged in your program?
That was my imposter syndrome creeping through. If you could hear that through the screen. If you sit and you think, okay, am I here because of the way I look, or am I here because I deserve to be here? You'll sit and ponder for the rest of your life, because I don't know if you'll ever know. I personally learned to not care about how things were done, but to just be thankful that I was in a place where I could change the trajectory of my life. And honestly, we need people to advocate and to say, you know what, especially now in these challenging times, we need people who are going to push the envelope and move the needle, because we're in a climate where a lot of people want to push back on efforts to make places more diverse, or to have places be overrepresented, so that we can kind of fix the wrongs of the last few hundred years, right? Just in terms of like belonging and like whether, I deserve to be there. Like, I did deserve to be there. I worked my butt off during my master's, right? I gave you every reason why I deserved to be there. I had a research acumen. I had pretty good GRE scores. I had a good GPA. I had a good head on my shoulders. And I just needed someone to give me a chance, and Georgia Tech did. So I'm incredibly grateful for that opportunity. And it was a bumpy ride, though. But
you're Dr. Bernard now.
Yeah. Academic things. To answer your question, what was bumpy? Mm-hmm. I think moving to grade A research institution from another research institution with kind of lower standards, it was just harder. It was hard to fit in because I didn't know what excellent research looked like. I didn't know what consistency looked like. I didn't know kind of the high standard I was going to be held to, honestly. And if I had someone pull me aside and go, hey, these are the 5 habits you need to be a great researcher. A, document. B, consistency is everything, right? So 5 hours a day is much better than kind of ebbing and flowing and trying to make up for lost time in the future. What else could I have been told from my future self or a mentor? Kind of advocating for yourself and always selling yourself in the best light, because people will latch on to any sort of self-negativity you have. I didn't think I was going to give myself an impromptu 5 lessons, maybe 3 lessons.
With bated breath. I'm just I need to know these 5 things.
It's at least 3, right? It's at least 3. But the point is, I had a podcast that could be like, these are the 3 lessons, not 5. Or had a mentor, I think, that it would have been a less bumpy road. And I'll talk about this probably a little later, just like over the course of my time there, more and more students of color came in. We formed like a student organization and like tried to support each other and teach each other things. And ultimately, it's really hard to continue to advocate for each other and for students who came after you, because ultimately you need to be a little bit selfish in order to get your work done, and it's a lot of work. But it was still a valiant effort to try to fill a void that was needed, which is kind of mentorship in those academic spaces.
And it's time for our ad break. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be right back. Are you a therapist of color struggling to find your place in the mental health world? Sparkle Healing LLC has got you covered. Located in the DC metropolitan area, they focus on helping the helper. Discover their exclusive therapy services designed for therapists and other helping professionals to thrive. Immerse yourself in a supportive community, elevate your practice with expert consulting and supervision, and don't miss their rejuvenating wellness retreats, crafted to replenish your mind and spirit. Sparkle Healing LLC, where therapists find solace, community, and professional growth. Visit them today at www.sparklehealing.com. Tune in to a brighter future.
Welcome back to the Color of Success, the Black academic experience.
And I think it's you kind of touched me when you were like, it's a lot of work to like be an advocate for students, and sometimes you have to be a little selfish, because a lot of times in like higher education spaces, they talk about like this idea of Black tax, that faculty experience, having to mentor Black students, but they don't think about the tax of Black students having to support each other, and that's implications on our experiences in graduate school.
Yeah. We had a student organization. It was called BEAM, Biomedical Engineering Alliance for Minorities. And the acronym was really a play on 2 things. It was like a beam can support you, right? Support you along the way, or a beam can be a guiding light to help you wander through a dark forest, right? And so this program was originally kind of born out of a text chain, right? Black Girl Magic, where all the Black girls, got together. They'd have Wind Down Wednesdays. They support each other through things, and eventually that like support system ended up branching out into like the Black and Hispanic students through BEAM. I mean, ultimately, it originally, like, we had a lot of momentum, but as more and more students of color started coming in, it was funny because they started creating cliques. They didn't feel like they needed the program, which is like almost a success in a way. There's so much representation that you feel like you don't need that support system that we felt like we needed a few years before because of the dearth in people of color. So ultimately, I think that by doing these programs, we're still filling a niche that's needed at the graduate school level, right? There's just not enough support for students who look like us.
And were there professors who looked like you?
There were a few. I mean, becoming a professor is really hard. I can see almost why there aren't Black professors. Like Black grad student experience in general, I feel like is, and I can't speak for others, but I've heard others speak, and I feel like Black grad students have a much harder time assimilating to academia. So why would you want to stay in that forever?
Preach, Fabrice.
We're on the job market and we have those same thoughts. Why would we do this to ourselves? But yes. So thinking about your support system, what did your support system look like while you were in grad school?
Candidly, like, my mom was like my rock through grad school. she would say, like, you're strong and you got this. And one time I called her on the phone and I was like, look, I'm tired of being strong. All right? I need support. I've spent decades being strong, and honestly, she spent half a century being strong. So I can't even comprehend how difficult it was, like, to raise me by herself. Because I'm raising myself by myself now, and it's still pretty tough. But I really feel like my family and my friends in grad school who were kind of living that shared experience were actually a pretty great support system. I think about, like, my roommates and my friends who weren't Black, and I feel like they really, during 2015 to 2021, when I did have complete my PhD, there were a lot of kind of social events, right, that kind of brought the injustices brought against Black people to the surface. We all know the summer of 2020, how hilarious that was to see people go, oh my God, this is so bad. And it's like, what? Like,
it's been happening.
What are you talking about? It's been happening. So you're now seeing this? It's like, I don't know if you know, Princess Diana died. We're talking about old news. So it's just, but seeing, like, the way friends were just genuine throughout the entire experience. It's a friend group I still have today, and they're not Black, but they're too well tuned to the issues that Black men and women can face sometimes. But yeah, it's hard for me to say whether, I feel like I'm fortunate to be able to say that, because I know there's people who go off to grad school in, like, pretty isolated areas and feel like they have zero support, and maybe they don't have as much familial support financially or emotionally and stuff like that. So as much as I want to, like, be positive in my experience, it's hard for me to calibrate knowing that there's people who receive nothing. So who am I to say that, like, I didn't get enough? So
I mean, your experience is valid. And so it's not about comparing to anyone. But I wonder, what did the financial support look like? So did you get a scholarship?
Yeah, so I was actually one of the, I would say, lucky ones. So I received an extra $5,500 a year pre-tax on top of my, I guess, what was $28,000 stipend at the time. So, with tuition being fully reimbursed and having a stipend and that additional scholarship, yeah, I was paycheck to paycheck. But, like, I also didn't have great money management skills. I didn't know how to really make $33,000 work. In hindsight, I probably didn't need to spend every single dollar the way I spent it. Like, my housing ended up being like $1,200, $1,300 a month after everything. And when you do the math, that really only leaves me like $800, $900. And if I'm buying food, let's say food is somewhere between $200 and $400, car insurance, you guys know things quickly add up. So, prioritizing a lower cost of living place so that I could do something like save $200, $300 a month would have really saved me from some of the financial hardship that I did end up having during my PhD.
So that's number 4. Learn how to manage your money.
Don't spend every dollar. Yeah, I mean, this goes back to the support system, right? If I knew that at the end of the day, if my bank account hit 0, I could just make the dreaded phone call and replenish it. But I tried really not to do that, and only when I felt like I was back into a corner did I play that card, because I think it stemmed back to those times where I felt like I was leaning completely on my mother for survival when I was working, that job. So I didn't want to feel like a burden anymore. So I really didn't ask for much. But maybe I should have, honestly. Because nobody needs financial turmoil on top of countless experiment not working, or advisors saying that you'll get kicked out of the lab if you don't, change your ways.
And so kind of like thinking about how you balanced all that, what was your work life, self-care balance? What did that look like while you were in grad school?
Next question. No, I'm just kidding.
I can tell you ours is lots of wine.
Lots of wine. So it's funny. I mean, everything is funny looking backwards, right? Because I used to actually play a lot of basketball at the Georgia Tech gym. And besides the fact that I would probably tear every tendon in my body right now if I attempted to play basketball, the PhD, at least a research PhD, I think is one of the most flexible times anyone is ever going to have in their life. And I wish I had spent a little bit more of it on things that I loved, like music and stuff like that. But I do feel like work-life balance was actually kind of nice. And I feel like that's also why it took me 6 years to finish my PhD, because I was just kind of going at the pace I felt like going at, as opposed to going hard every single day. So long story short, I do feel like there was balance, but there were definitely a lot of unhealthy behaviors, long days in the lab, followed by binge eating garbage in order to stay awake. Around the time of my dissertation, actually, I felt like that was the most unhealthy part of my life ever. I think I ate Quick Trip taquitos, Takis, and a slushie every other day.
Like a teenager.
For like a teenager for 3 months at least. And yeah, I'm thankful to be alive, honestly.
Yeah, the digestive system was like, please stop.
The doctor that I didn't go to was like, please stop. I was like, I'm not going, because I don't want him to tell me my insides are made out of red 40. So
I guess, was there any support or thing that you wish you did throughout graduate school?
Any support
that you wish you had, or anything that you wish you did to help nurture your mental health throughout graduate school?
I really think that it's important to have a person to speak to about these things, but I also think about me signing up to be someone else's mentor, and how quickly life just gets in the way of taking the 20 minutes to have a coffee date with that person and figure out how they're doing, and knowledge sharing and stuff like that. So as much as it would have been cool to have someone who looked like me do that, I just know that people get pretty selfish, honestly, in grad school. They just want to focus on themselves, and I don't blame them for not, always taking the extra step to mentor someone through that challenging time. Knowing what I know now, I know that there's so many online resources that people can use to, that little. We have a list of 4 things now.
Yeah.
Can't wait to figure out what number 5 is. But knowing that there's so many opportunities to learn from others who are sharing their voice, I wish I would have been tuned into something like that. Or if you guys would have started in 2019.
Yeah, we knew nothing then. We didn't know what was coming then.
Not at all. We were blindsided.
Yeah.
Ultimately, from your experiences in grad school, like what value, or your doctoral degree that you have now, like what value, if any, did your experiences in graduate school have on your professional life now that you can look back?
I feel like resilience and failure are kind of live together. I think because a research degree, biomedical research degree is just like failing until you succeed. And so I've become kind of accustomed to failing, which is good or bad, and then pretty resilient about it. So not feeling like I won't succeed because there's a blimp in the way or a blip in the way. In terms of value, honestly, I think in the long run, it'll add a lot of value to my career. But I think in the short term, I think there's a lot of trauma actually that came from grad school. Like there were things that happened to me just academically, like 2 times I was put on academic probation because I wasn't meeting the standard that my 2 advisors had thought that they set. And they thought maybe that was like a motivating thing for me to like be on probation, but I would say it was like the opposite of motivating. It was like detrimental to my success because I felt like everything I had ever worked for was now at the risk of the next 6 weeks or whatever until they had to make their decision about whether I was going to get off probation the next semester, right? And just looking at other students in the program, other students who came after me, I feel like that was a card that was often played. It's like, oh, you're just going to put you on probation. And I felt like other students, white students especially, could get away with murder before that was ever an option. The point here is that, like, there's good and bad that came from this. For sure.
We often ask each other why there's so few Black men with PhDs, and I think you just sort of answered part of the reason why. But on a lighter note, are you important now? Like, do people listen to you because you are Dr. Fabrice?
I think so. I have a boss actually who doesn't miss any chance to remind me that I'm smart and that I have a PhD. And actually, we have a client meeting on Monday, and he's like, "You better remind them that you have like 3 degrees from 4 schools. You got a PhD. You know a lot about science. You're very smart in this space." And so, for sure, I am valued and respected because of the immense amount of work I put in to getting here.
And it's so wonderful to have a supportive boss that, those days when you're doubting yourself, they're just like, you are great. Yeah. That's just the affirmation that you need sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
So we only have a couple more questions. If you had to give any advice, I know we have your 4. Is there a 5th tidbit of advice that you would give the people?
Oh, yeah, no. If I had to think about the last thing in terms of being successful, it's balance is really important. I know I talked about consistency as being one of those things, but you can be consistent, but have a hobby, hang out with your friends, do the things that make you happy, because even though you feel like you're a professional student, life is not all about work and school. You're a human and life is fragile. So enjoy every moment of it. I used to spend a lot of my time thinking that, once I have a job and I'm making money, everything's going to be great. But I did that and everything wasn't great. I was making way more than I was making in my PhD, and the money meant nothing because I wasn't living my life. So, yeah.
That's hard to hear considering where we are.
Yeah, no. Live your life. It doesn't matter if you're a student. It doesn't matter if you're a professional. At the end of the day, your life is not what you do necessarily. I mean, it can be, but it should be a mixture of a little bit of everything. Yeah. Sugar and spice and everything nice. And a little bit of bad stuff too. And a little bit of adulting. Actually a lot of bit of adulting.
See, Brianna, I should go live on a farm.
Let's not. No. You're too close. We're like expected to graduate in May, and she frequently reminds me that she wants to go live on a farm, and I'm just like, be Dr. Farmer, like, what is it? But that's what her heart is telling her to do. You never know.
I mean, to be fair, my advisor like left Emory and moved to Oregon, and now pretty much lives on a farm in Oregon, and teaching at the University of Oregon, by the way. So
she lives off the land. He lives off the land.
¿Por qué no los dos?
Yeah. Well, our last question that we like to ask, and it's just a little fun. If you had to title your dissertation or your graduate school experience, what would the title of your book be?
Ooh. So on the spot here, okay, there's one thing that I kind of left out during my entire grad school experience, which I feel like needs to come back in here. I actually met my fiance during grad school. She actually worked in the lab, like right next to mine. You know, I'm incredibly grateful for having done this experience, good and bad, because I feel like the long-lasting thing that's going to come from that is like my forever person. So I feel like my title is, you know, something about like kind of sucked, but at least I found my way.
I like it. I like it, Fabrice. It's great. I'd read the book.
Kind of sucked sometimes, but there were a lot of beautiful moments. I'm still workshopping this title because now I feel like there's new iterations.
You can email it to us. Like,
she's like, "Can you get off the line? I don't need you iterating the title."
Change the title as many times as you want to. We'll put it as your episode name.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, our wedding hashtag was gonna be like Fab in the lab or something like that. Or lab school or grad school sweethearts or something like that. We'll figure it out.
We really appreciate you coming in and chatting with us. It's been fun to learn about your experiences.
Hey you. Yes you. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell button, and the like button. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram. We are @_color of success. Bye-bye now.